Good evening. Oh, thank you. I love it when people do that. My name is Emily Mead. I am Chief Philanthropy Officer for the New Bedford Whaling Museum, and on behalf of the museum, it is my honor to welcome you here tonight. There's a lot of excitement these days about football or soccer, FIFA, and the World Cup this spring. And while this fever may be new for some people in the region, the South Coast has deep ties to soccer, deep roots on the South Coast. So tonight's program will explore these roots, and we're delighted that it brings veteran sports journalist John Gonsalves and an expert panel to the museum tonight. So this evening is part of the museum's Portuguese and Lusophone World Lecture Series, which is an annual program at the New Bedford Whaling Museum. This evening, tonight's program was made possible by our patron sponsor, which is Bridgewater State University. And I think we have a crew from Bridgewater here. Where are you guys? Oh, yeah, there you are. Right. Welcome, and thank you. A wonderful partner. And our benefactor sponsor is the Azorian Maritime Heritage Society. And I know we have a few maritime heritage folks here as well. So, all over. You guys are all over. Our friend sponsor is the Madeiran Club, which I will say in English because that is how I can say it. And I will also add that this series would not be possible without the support of the Department of Portuguese and Brazilian Studies at Brown University. Yep, absolutely. And also receives support from FLAUD, the Luso-American Foundation of Lisbon, the William M. Wood Foundation as well. And I also want to extend special thanks to Tiago de Souza and the Consulate of Portugal in New Bedford. I think Tiago is here, but I didn't see him. All right, well, we're grateful for the consul's support as well. And of course, our wonderful media partners at WJFD, 97.3 FM. And the museum's Portuguese Advisory Council, which is co-chaired by Anessimo Almeida and Gil Perry. So thank you to the council for all its work. And our very good friend, Rep. Tony Cabral, is here as well. Thanks, Tony, for being here. And finally, I want to thank all of you who are museum members. Your membership sustains everything that we do, and so thanks to you, in 2026, the museum continues to thrive. We have strong visitation levels. We're fully booked for school groups through the end of June, so we've got lots of field trips and kids running around the museum, and we have exciting programs like this that we offer throughout the year. So if you're not a member, please do sign up tonight because you will get not only free admission throughout a 12-month period, but you'll get 50% off ticketed programs like tonight's, and including our next iteration of the Portuguese Lusophone World Lecture Series, which will be a celebration of the Portuguese tall ship Sagres. It will be co-presented with the Azorian Maritime Heritage Society right here on the evening of July 21st. So get your membership now and get half-off tickets for July. Before I bring John to the podium, I actually want to recognize one last special guest, Leo Silvera, a sixth grader at Nativity Prep. Where's Leo? Right over here. Leo recently won a worldwide drawing contest, and his drawing has earned him the honor of having his artwork featured on the side of the Brazilian national team's bus for the FIFA World Cup. So congratulations, Leo, and thanks to your family and friends for joining us this evening. One brief housekeeping note, following the evening's talk and panel, rather than having the reception here at the museum, we're actually going to be the team here will unalarm these doors and we'll be heading across the street to Tia Maria's for some light bites and a cash bar. So we're really grateful to our neighbors, Jessica and Tia Maria's, for hosting us this evening, for their hospitality. So feel free to come across the street. So it is now my pleasure to introduce John Gonsalves, a journalist and sports broadcaster for New Bedford's very own WJFD 97.3 FM.
Good evening. Welcome, and first of all, thank you for providing us with the opportunity to address something that is so important to all of us who are participating on this panel, and it is something that was of huge pride for the Portuguese community going back to the 60s. I got a little worried because when I first came in, I saw some people with clippings from the 1930s. That's a little before my time, and so I am going to address the period that began in the 60s, early 60s, when we had this huge influx of Portuguese immigration to this area. And it's interesting that we, in that era, in the 60s, were ignorant of what Portuguese Americans had done in the previous decades. And as I researched, I felt a little embarrassed because we go back to the 1930s, and there was a guy that's not related to me, Billy Gonsalves, who actually played on the U.S. national team. And then the greatest feat in the history of American soccer is the victory in the World Cup in 1950, when the United States beat England 1-0, and there were 2 Portuguese Americans on that team, both named Sousa, and it's something that I would say nowadays kids have no idea that the United States at one point beat England, who's one of the favorites this year, and that there were 2 Portuguese American kids that played on that team. So from that period through the Ponta Delgada club, which was the dominant club in the United States, obviously there's a great deal of success which precedes us. So I came into the picture initially when I was approached. I thought, I'm going to speak about how Portugal went from being a small country of 10 million people that just wished and hoped to qualify for a big tournament to today being one of the top 5 countries in the world. And this way I would say, well, that's great, because we had Project, the United States Soccer Federation had Project 2010 when they hired Carlos Queiroz, who's the person most responsible for today's success in Portugal, in Portuguese soccer, to develop a blueprint that would allow the United States to be competing and possibly being the world champion in 2010. So they called it appropriately Project 2010. So as you can see, there's a lot of links, a lot of connections to Portugal. But they said, no, we would prefer that you concentrate on soccer, what it means to the community, how it affects us culturally, how it dominates daily life in Portugal. And I said, well, that's easy. I look around and I see people like Onésimo that came during that period. I said, well, that's perfect. I can talk about what it was like when I got here in 1966. Things were quite different in those days. And so as I started thinking about it, I began to pick some of the people that are on the panel here today. And all we're going to try to do is give you personal experiences from the heart to tell you what we went through and how soccer became such a crucial part of my life, Carlos's life, Lucio's life, Ruben's, Yasmin's, everybody. We have lifetime friends that were made because of and through soccer. And the Portuguese communities today are as successful as they are, in part because of the clubs that invested in soccer in those days. So I came here, as I said, in 1966 because, unfortunately, there was an event in 1957 in the island of Faial, a volcano called Vulcão dos Capelinhos, specifically on, and I wrote this down, September 27, 1957. And obviously, that was devastating, and there was a lot of solidarity in the United States. And at the time, there were some prominent local politicians that got involved, and I made sure that I wrote them down so I don't forget their names. One was Rhode Island State Representative Joseph Perry Jr., and then there were 2 federal senators, one from Rhode Island, John Pastore, and one from Massachusetts, a young man named John Kennedy, who coincidentally became President of the United States. And through their efforts, there was an Azorian Refugee Act that was passed in 1958. And basically the idea for that was to allow the people who were displaced by the volcano to be able to come here and start their lives anew. But as with everything that we get involved with, things just tend to grow. It's never as simple as it's intended to, because the original quotas was 1,500 people that would be able to come every year. And I think, looking back, I think in 1968 alone, there were 10,000 people that came to this area. So, how in the world did I get here? Well, I got here because my uncle, one of my mother's brothers, João was a fairly common name in Portugal, was stationed in the army in St. Michael. And he met this beautiful, gorgeous, stunning woman in the village of Mosteiros, my tio Lourdes. Took her with him back to Lisbon, which I don't know if he'd be able to do that today, but they got married, and then it turned out that my aunt had family here. So before you know it, the uncle sent away for my aunt and her husband, and within 10 years, out of the 9 siblings on my mother's side, 8 of us were here. So that's how I got here. So I came in '66, and I can tell you my first couple of years were a nightmare because I was born and raised in Lisbon. I was used as a teenager to just do whatever I wanted to do. I'd go everywhere. And then you get here, and your lifestyle is your parents get up in the morning to go to work. They work 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours. They come home, get ready for the next day to go to work, and you, if you want, you watch some television, but you don't speak English, so you need to pick it up as soon as possible. And so I was not having fun. I was not enjoying life. But then, all of a sudden, I started looking around, and there was some Portuguese organizations that were surfacing and being created at the time, because that wave of immigration that came in the early 60s to the late 60s was bringing thousands of people to this community. And they came in, and they wanted to know about what was going on back home. They wanted to have information. There were no Portuguese language media outlets here except for, and believe it or not, it was the only daily newspaper published in Portuguese outside of Portugal, that was in part being done by someone that I had the pleasure of working with. Now, Henry and Paulina know Mr. Calado very well, but there was not much enough, or at least enough, for this new wave of immigration. So Diário de Notícias closed, I believe, in '74. So the Portuguese clubs then had this influx of new people that suddenly revitalized them, rejuvenated them, injected all kinds of new life and ideas into them. And there were social organizations that helped us along. Onésimo and I were involved with the Portuguese Youth Cultural Organization, which no longer exists, and eventually became a social service agency. But all of these things were happening at the same time, and were allowing the community to grow. And LASA, obviously, would come a little later. So our love for soccer has always been inherent within our blood. In the early 60s, Benfica became twice back-to-back European champions, and that spurred a new interest in the sport. Sporting did it in 1964. The Portuguese national team in '66 came in 3rd place in England, and so this appreciation for the success of soccer developed and grew. And the local clubs had teams. Most of the local clubs started investing in their own soccer teams. The problem was the league that existed in this area was, let's say, not very receptive to this new group of guys that thought they knew more than they did. They had rules that kind of disfavored the Portuguese teams, and the organization was the Southeastern, let me make sure, the Southern New England Soccer Association, which I remember was also known as the William Morissette League. And Mr. Morissette used to just make arbitrary decisions. Some player got red carded. If he played for this team, he'd be suspended for a game. But then if somebody came over the house and this other guy played for the other team, he'd be suspended for 10 games. And the local Portuguese clubs said, you know, this is ridiculous. We are more than they are. We have so many clubs. Why don't we get together? And in the summer of 1973, a group of local club directors got together at a meeting, and the goal of that meeting was to create a new league, a new association, and make sure that the Portuguese clubs were well represented and that things were well organized. And so there were 2 people, and I did some research to make sure I didn't omit any of them. And I see a number of people here that were involved in LASA. There were people like João Maciel was a great coach and a great goalkeeper. It was John Medeiros, who eventually became the dean of high school soccer referees. John Medeiros was everywhere, and I still do once in a while, I hate to admit this, but high school games, and that's John's legacy, but he was one of those involved. And then there was a man named Agustin Cardoso that got involved as well. Most of the clubs refused to attend the meeting, and the reason is very simple. We attend the meeting, this guy Morissette finds out that we were there and we're trying to create a competing league. If we're getting 5 games now, we're going to get 15 games from now on. So they stayed away. But they persisted, and eventually they had a meeting and they said, you know, there's no turning back right now. There's just no turning back. Because this is ridiculous, we're spending a lot of money, we're very serious, we love what we're doing, and these guys are telling us what we can and cannot do, and God knows how and why and what the rules might be, so no. They designated 2 people, 2 representatives, to go to New York City and meet with the United States Soccer Federation, because they wanted to become affiliated. And the USSF was not very receptive because their logic was there's a league there, so you guys must be disgruntled clubs, so why are we creating something new? But they stuck to their guns, and they did. And so the Luso-American Soccer Association was born, initially with 9 clubs, 7 of them from New Bedford. And just to go back on our memory lane, Centro Luso-Americano, Clube Recordações de Portugal, Clube Sport Madeirense, Clube União Feilense, Luso Autobody, New Bedford Sports, Portuguese-American Athletic Club, and outside of the city of New Bedford, it was Taunton Sports and Fall River Athletic Club. Their first tournament actually did not finish. It was played at Pine Hill, and those of you that were involved, I look at someone like Manny here on my right. Pine Hill was the mecca, I think, of LASA soccer in those days. And it's in Acushnet, and it had an entrance where you could only go in a car at a time. But if Portuguese-American was playing Portuguese sports, if Portuguese-American was playing Académica Fall River Sports, even Bristol Sports, and the game was at 3 o'clock, and you were inside the pavilion and needed to leave, and you say, oh, the game starts at 3, I'll leave at 2:45. Well, unless your car had wings, you were not leaving until probably 3:30 or so. And if you wanted to get to the game on time, you had to get to the end of the road because the line would be a mile long to get into the pavilion at Pine Hill. It's just incredible memories from those days. And so what happened was eventually LASA grew. And it grew because of the quality of the product. So what made it so attractive to the local fans to go and watch the games in addition to the quality? It's the fact that every year there were thousands of immigrants coming, mostly from the Azores, settling in this area. And people coming included very talented soccer players or football players. And therefore, José Maria, eu não sei quem é José Maria. Of course I know who he is. Yeah, he's playing for Bristol Sports. And word of mouth got out. In the meantime, there was a need now for information to be disseminated. So the Portuguese language media outlets also benefited a great deal from the fact that now there was a public, there were people that were interested in hearing about it, reading about it, and watching it. And so we saw the Portuguese Times come from New Jersey, I believe in 1973. It still exists. And it's probably the best organized one because I think, and this is it's kind of a side message, but something that I would like to leave with everybody here. We did a lousy job preserving and recording our history. If you look, you can't really find most of the records that you would like to have. And the reason I have a lot of information like this is because I was much younger and I was able to sit down with people like Manuel Adelino Ferreira, who was a walking and human encyclopedia, Manuel Calado, people like this that actually took notes, and then with the younger kids would say, yeah, do you remember why we did that? Nowadays, all of that is gone. So people like Manuel Adelino Ferreira, who passed away, Manuel Calado passed away, like I was telling my wife, when I pass away, the stuff I have is like the first thing my kids will do. My daughter-in-laws will probably get a big dumpster and throw everything in the garbage. You know, that's the way it is. And if you remember, the Portuguese Channel came around, and then Jornal de Fall River came around, and the Azorian Times came around. And it was interesting in the decade of the 70s, each one had like a defined goal. The Azorian Times grew out of the independence movement in St. Michael in the Azores when their colors were green. And then it developed, adjusted, like we all do. That's the great thing about Portuguese people. We are able to adjust and make things work the best possible way for us. And so during this growth period, this happened. And to give you an idea of how well organized LASA was, don't take my word for it, I brought some props. And let me show you. This book is the bylaws for the Luso-American Soccer Association. It's got, I don't know how many hundreds of pages, every rule you can think of. Because, why is that? Because they were so competitive that if you gave a player a 2-game suspension, you better damn be right, and you better damn have a rule that says he has to sit 2 games, okay? That's how it, okay. So this is, because there's former players here, this is the disciplinary code. So this is telling the players and the clubs and the managers and so on, this is how much you're going to get, what kind of a fine you're getting, how much of a suspension you're getting if you break rule A, B, C, and D, okay? That's LASA. This is the financial statement, a financial statement from the Luso-American Soccer Association. The year, this is 11/20/1999, which is pretty much when LASA ended. And before the GPS days, they were so organized, every club got a map with the location of the field of every team that played in LASA. And every week, there was a report that went out to every single team with the results, the scores, the goal scorers, the penalties, the suspensions, everything you can think of. And I've got this one, because I think I wrote it, but it was in August of 1989, and the title was, "The Russians Are Coming to New Bedford," because the LASA All-Star team played a team called the Dnepro from the old Soviet Union. So, and also to give you an idea of the extension of LASA, and I'm sure I forgot some, I know that Lucio told me I forgot Peabody, so there was a club from Peabody. From Fall River Sports, we had from Fall River we had Young Nationals Academic Fall River Sports. From New Bedford, in addition to all those clubs, we had St. Michael, Recordações, we had Clube Luís Camões from Stoughton. From Rhode Island, Portuguese Continental Union from Pawtucket, Lusitana Sports from Cumberland, East Providence Portuguese-American, Warren Soccer Club, Cranston Portuguese Club, Holy Ghost from West Warwick, Bristol Sports, Phalanx from Cambridge, Lowell United and Lusitanos de Lowell, Hudson Benfica, and Ludlow. So imagine on a map the area that's covered by this league. And any decent game would get 1,500 people, 2,000 people. The quality and the level of play was just off the charts. And I just want to give you a few examples, and then I'll turn it over to the other people so they can relay their experiences, that I think give you a perspective of what LASA was like. In that period, and LASA became affiliated in 1980, and the reason it became affiliated is up until then, they would just register their players and charge the clubs, I don't know, $3 to register player and so on. But there was no insurance, and then there was a problem getting referees. So the state came down, and the U.S. Soccer Federation said, you guys want referees? You guys want to continue existing? Very simple. You have to affiliate. At first, there was not a good reception, because why are we paying the state $5 per player? And what are we getting? Referees. Okay, we got to pay for the referees. So we got to pay for the refs. We got to pay for the players. How does that benefit? Well, one of the side benefits was that the national referees in the United States, if they wanted to advance, if they wanted the opportunity to be a candidate to officiate in the FIFA World Cup, had to officiate a minimum number of games in Laza. Laza was the proving ground because a lot of stuff went on. I'll tell you some of the stories, really fascinating. And so, my favorite referee, I'm sure Manny knows him, Carlos remembers him, Lucio remembers him. My favorite referee was an Italian guy named Vinny Morrow. And Vinny was absolutely incredible. One of the things I remember about him is he took control of the game in the first few minutes. First, he opened his whistle, and Carlos will tell you. If Carlos, let's say he was number 14, he did something, he'd say, I saw that 14, next time you get a card. Nobody knew. Nobody knew what went on. But Carlos knew. Carlos said, oh my God, oh Jesus. Oh. If he had to show a yellow card, he'd show it early. He says, you control the game early on. And then that's it. And Vinny wound out officiating in the World Cup that was played in his native Italy, basically because of the experience that he gained in Laza. And there were others, Elder Diaz, a lot of these names. And when I went back and looked at my notes, incredible memories. Unfortunately, most of those people are no longer with us. But this is officiating. In terms of the players, there were a number of players that came to Laza that played in the World Cup for their national teams. At least 2 Brazilian players played here. As far as local talent is concerned, what I can tell you, I'm not going to mention his name because he's a fairly well-known individual, does color commentary for TV and so on. He was on the United States national team, played for a Portuguese club in Hudson. And guess what? He was not good enough to play on the Laza All-Star team. Okay? And I can tell you that because I was fortunate enough to have selected the All-Star team, the Laza All-Star team, twice. But he was not good enough to play for Laza, although he was good enough to play for the United States. And I think he had 14 caps for the United States. So imagine the kind of talent that we had. Now, initially, we were closed in, just Portuguese players. And we didn't really get exposed in the good sense until we started getting coverage in English language media. And I got started, it's like there's always stories for that, but I got started because, as you know, if you're a Portuguese fan, you know, my team, we never lose because we didn't play as well as the opponent. We never lose because the other team was better. We lose because some guy with a black uniform and a whistle decided that he is going to favor the other guys. So we're going to lose. That's how it is. So I was covering a game at it used to be Sargent Field, and it became Paul Walsh Field, and now, appropriately, it's the Manny Matos Field, and Manny was one of the alumnus from Laza. It's just an incredible story. Let me just get sidetracked a little here. I cannot give justice to what Manny went through. Manny was a Portuguese immigrant like us. Okay? Came here when he was a young kid. And Manny got a full ride to West Virginia University. So he got a full scholarship, became an All-American at West Virginia, became a longtime coach here at New Bedford High School. I think, I'm not sure, but I don't think New Bedford High had more than 3 losses in any season that Manny coached. He was just an incredible individual, passed away at a younger life, but he was one of the many people that made Laza what it is today. But as I was saying, so this game is at Sargent Field, and I was covering it for O Jornal, and I said, this is not good. Everybody was going crazy. This is not good. I got to wait outside, see what happens when the refs leave. So the poor refs are coming, and I'm just here watching. And at the time, the New Bedford Standard Times actually covered Laza. They had a guy who was a former Vietnam vet, Dana. I don't know if you remember him, gruffy guy with a beard. And he's watching as well. And as the referees come, there's a car to our left. And there's 2 guys ducking, sitting underneath the car. And as the poor refs come, here comes one of the guys with a chain and tried to hit him. Okay? So they ducked. Dana said, hey, what the hell's wrong with you guys? What are you doing? And they, who's this guy? Boom, down goes Dana. Long story short, Dana goes back to the Standard Times and says, these people are nuts. I am as good as I'm ever going to be. I'm done. I'd rather be in Vietnam than deal with this. See you guys. So the Standard Times now had a problem because all of a sudden they have no coverage. They called the Portuguese Times, and I think it was Carlos Frazão, and asked, hey, do you guys have anybody, you guys cover the league, do you have anybody that, that could cover the games for us in Portuguese? No, in English, not us. And they said, well, the only one is probably that young kid in Fall River. I think he's still in college, so he probably knows enough English to cover it. So I got a call, and sure enough, I said, listen, I've never written a story in English, because when I started working at a journal, my job was initially to translate ads, to translate stories, and then at the end, Dinis Paiva and Afonso Costa were the people doing the sports, said, well, we need somebody else. And, you know, the Division II games that nobody goes to, you can go, John, why don't you start covering Division II games? Oh, okay, so that's how I started. And they said, well, look, John, no big deal. You write it, give it to us, we'll edit it, don't worry about it. Just, you know, don't make stuff up, be as accurate as you can be. And the first time I got in trouble, big lesson from media experts. I wrote in a story, I think it was Portuguese-American that played, that there was a penalty shot that the referee didn't call. So the editor said, John, I'm a little confused about the story that you wrote. I said, yeah. You wrote here that there was a penalty shot? I said, yes. For Portuguese-American? I said, yes. And who took the penalty? No, the referee didn't call it. Oh, so there was no penalty shot. Well, yes, the guy tripped him in the box. John, you're the writer, okay? You don't pass judgment on that. If you want to say that the penalty shot should have been called, okay, you get the forward that was tripped, and you interview the guy and say, what do you think about that play? He has to say that it was a penalty shot that the referee didn't call, not you. So that's how, and then from then I got a call from the Herald News, then Providence Journal had a local edition. So to make a long story short, at one time I was covering Laza, doing 2 stories every weekend, one as a preview, one as a wrap-up for the Standard Times, the Herald News, Providence Journal, and then eventually the Taunton Gazette. Fortunately, I have a great wife. I'm not sure how she put up with that for the longest time, because I was invisible at home on weekends, and she's the one that had to deal with 2 young kids driving her nuts because Dad was not around. And in those days, I became basically the face of Laza, which normally is not a good thing, because as a journalist, you're supposed to be unbiased, but anytime that anything happened, I got there. And then to give you an idea, I saved this, I hope, our word got around. Let me give you, just to wrap it up, just 2 things. One was, when we finally began to accept non-Portuguese players, there were a lot of foreign players that came. But I have one story that I never forgot. A young kid, an American kid, his name was Mike Pilger, played for Boston University. And when I was the all-star team selector, he came up through Cranston, the Cranston Portuguese club. We were playing against Sporting. And Mike was a great player. I don't know if it's from your time, Manny, you remember him? And so at the dinner, he was in tears. He said, Mr. Gonsalves, this is unbelievable. What do you mean? In the fall, when I go back to school, I'm going to tell my friends, my teammates, that I played against these 3 guys that are on the Portuguese national team that played in the World Cup, and one guy had to defend me? Are you kidding me? So that was the Laza that existed, and we were extremely popular. There were people like Michael Emanolo, I think he might have been your teammate, Lucio, right? From Nigeria, Boston University as well, who eventually, right now, is the football director for the Saudi Arabia Pro League. He was the football director for Chelsea Football Club when they were winning the English Premier League. He was the football director for Monaco in Ligue 1 in France. Those were the kind of people that were associated with Laza. But to finish and wrap it up, and then we'll let everybody else give you their chance to speak, was a while back when I was coaching in 1998, I coached a district team in the summer, And as we got to the field, we're warming up, one guy said, John, there's a guy here that wants to talk to you. The guy? Yeah, he's from Philadelphia? Philadelphia. What's the guy, what do you mean, Philadelphia? I don't know. He's here with a photographer. They want to talk to you. So I went over, and you see his name was Michael Bamberger. And he said, Mr. Gonsalves, do you have a couple of minutes to speak with us? Do you mind if we take pictures during the game and you tell us about this experience? I said, no, sure, what's up? And he said, well, we heard about how the Portuguese are so passionate for soccer, and the league in this area is the best league in the country. And I was charged with the responsibility of coming to do a story on the league. And as I called, they said, the guy you got to talk to is John Gonsalves. And where am I going to find him? So they called around and they said, you were here, you were coaching, your team was here. Do you mind talking to us? I said, no. And so the Philadelphia Inquirer used me to portray to the people in that community the message that the Portuguese community is absolutely crazy about soccer. We're passionate about soccer. So that's my story. And I know that it's time to go, because I remember when I took my coaching license, one of the instructors told me very clearly, he said, you know, one of the problems with coaches is when you get your license, you think you're big stuff, so you sit down, you got all these kids around you, and you keep talking and talking and talking for 10 minutes. You say, wow, you know, I sound pretty good. The kids are listening. And they said, no, the kids are bored out of their mind. They're just saying, when is this guy ever going to shut up so we can play? So I'm going to shut up so these guys can play. Okay. So and I invited two players who were both absolutely outstanding players. And there's no doubt in my mind that I'm sure they'll confirm that in those days, there were a number of players in Laza that, if MLS existed, would be MLS players. A lot of them. I'm not talking about one or two. Each team probably, each club probably had at least one or two players that could play. And when there was a strike during the indoor season in the NASL, the New England T-Man fielded the team at the Providence Civic Center solely with players from Laza. And they held their own. So, but Carlos is going to come up first for a couple of reasons. Soccer is a very inclusive sport, extremely inclusive sport. Okay, we don't need to speak to communicate. We just need to accept each other, because everybody on that team is going to play a role. And interestingly enough, if you go back in those days, the Portuguese community and the Cape Verdean community were one and the same. We always worked together. There were a number of clubs that had more of a Cape Verdean presence than others. In this area, Stoughton, for example, players like Di Stefan came from Clube Luís Camões from Stoughton. And Carlos was one of the superb, I mean superb. He was a star player. And it was a pleasure to watch him play, because he had a unique combination of skill and strength. He also knew how to kind of intimidate opponents without having to do anything except kind of saying, you know, by the way, okay. And he played against Sporting, he scored against Sporting. So the great thing about Carlos being here is that he went back to his native Cape Verde, and he was approached by a member of the committee, the organizing committee, who asked him if he'd be interested in coming by and participating. And he said, yes, I haven't seen Carlos in 30 years. He used to work in Somerset. He was an engineer there. So it's my great pleasure to introduce to you one of Laza's greatest players, Carlos Medina.
Good evening. Like John said, my name is Carlos Medina. I've been in the United States since 1975 when I arrived. Played for quite a few teams in Laza. I started with Recordações, Clube de Recordações. Then I went to Portuguese-American, where I had quite a few years of success with Portuguese-America. Had an awesome team. We won quite a few championships. But I also had an opportunity to play for other teams. I paid John well to invite me to the All-Star. I was one of the players that I like to think that I played for just about all the All-Stars, that Laza put together. Had some great memories playing against the Portuguese teams that came from the mainland, from Portugal, from Azores. We played against teams that came from Italy. So it was an excellent experience playing for Laza. And I also have to say that Laza played a major role in me getting an engineering degree from now what is UMass Dartmouth. At the time we used to call it SMU, Southeastern Massachusetts University. Laza played a major role because I played 2 years in college. For some reason, at the time, that was not really what I wanted to do, especially with getting an engineering degree. It wasn't easy. So I played with the local teams, and they volunteered to pay for my education, so which was the best thing I couldn't have got, To some extent, it may have worked a little bit against me because once I got an engineering degree, as a soccer player, I didn't pursue it as much as I should have. I continued to play, but didn't get involved with any coaching. I did some minor coaching. I did a little bit of player coaching, but in general, I pretty much stuck to my profession as an engineer. Like John said, I worked at the Brain Point Station for about 37 years as an engineer, mechanical engineer over there, and eventually the place closed and I retired. And now I spend most of my time in Cape Verde, enjoying the life that many of you would love to have, And I'm happy to be here as a Cape Verdean, and also recognizing the fact that Cape Verde, for the first time, gets qualified for the World Cup. I have to be honest, it's going to be a challenge, but you have to start somehow, somewhere, and this is the year, and I'm sure we're going to have lots of Portuguese, as long as we don't play Portugal. We have a lot of Portuguese basically pushing for us to go further. We got 3 games that are not easy games, The first one is going to be in Atlanta. I wish they had it here in New England, though. We would have quite a few people watching. And then the next one is going to be in Miami, Florida. And then the third one in Houston, Texas, which is going to be a little bit difficult for a lot of people to go. But I'm sure there'll be I'm sure Carlos Almeida is going to go. Correct, Carlos? So I'm here. I was very happy when John and the rest of the committee invited me, primarily through my cousin Carlos Almeida. But I'm glad and I was happy to accept the invitation. So I'm going to be part of this panel, hopefully be able to address any questions that you have and as we go along. Thank you.
Actually, Carlos touched on something that's really interesting. Laza was the best, without a doubt, amateur league in the country. Amateur, quote unquote, because all the players after a while got paid. So in the beginning, nobody got paid. It was for the love of the shirt, but then there was a while, and all it took is one. And I think I know who the person is, but I'm not going to say it because I think I might be related to him somehow. But it was a situation where a club paid someone to leave that club and join this club. So that's how it started. Players would get signing bonuses. I'm not going to say how much. But there are a lot of players that will tell you, and Carlos is a good example, that they were able to succeed in life because of the income that they received from playing. There was a lot of sacrificing. You had to work very hard to become a good player, but the clubs compensated you. And towards the end, there were players making $1,000 a game, okay, under the table. Not many, but some. I think we all know some big guy with an Irish name, so let's not mention who he is, but everybody got compensated after a while, so it was great. And then next on our panel is Lucio Santos, and Lucio was an incredible player. He had one skill that separated him from other players, I think, was his ability to convert set plays, free kicks. Every free kick near the area was a threat, was a danger. And Lucio, in addition to being a player, then followed what many do, which is he became a coach, got involved with his kids like I did, coached his sons, with one of his best friends. Danny was, I thought Danny would make it. Is he around? I don't know. So he's still involved. He's still a coach right now at the youth level. So I'd like Lucio to address you, but Lucio, I'd like you to paint a picture for the fans, for the people here, what it was like when you got on the field and you had play Sporting, for example, or in comparison, what it was like also to play, let's say, Académica.
Good evening. I'm a show and tell guy. I am so proud that I had the privilege of playing with so many good players in this incredible league and being part of an incredible community. There's someone special, my wife, who really sacrificed for over 46 years, where she would go to practices, sit in the car, and wait for me. And she put a wonderful book together, a book of memories. And boy, I treasure this. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what is it like to play for Laza. I was one of the privileged guys to come from the Azores and immediately got recruited to play. My first team was Fayelense of Cambridge, and then Stoughton came down, and there were 3 guys with 3-piece suits that arrived in my brother's house, and they said, we want you to go play for Stoughton. And I said, I don't even know what that is. First of all, no English, none whatsoever. I do speak 5 languages, but English was not one of them. And so I had to learn quick. But what impressed me the most was that it was a contract by a handshake. The Portuguese community, once they told you, we're going to pay you $10, they pay $10. It did not matter that the baker made 3 extra loaves of bread, but they were going to pay Lucio $10. And that was amazing. So when I went to Stoughton, and I played with mostly Cape Verdean players there, Fuji, Todge, Soma played for the national team of Cape Verde. Amazing. It was great. They promised me that they would find an apartment for me, pay for the apartment, gave me money for food, and put me through school. That's pretty amazing, huh? I was 17. In America, alone, no English. It's just amazing. I felt like they were my family. I was part of the community. In 1981, I became a permanent resident. I had a student visa, so I went to school to Massasoit Community College, got an associate's degree. In the meantime, I became a coach for Stoughton High School, and I was there for 10 years. That's amazing. And it's amazing because, again, the community embraced me. I was not just a coach. I was part of them. And they made me feel so good. People would travel to come and pick me up, to go for dinner over somebody's house. And then I met one of the greatest men that, sorry, Ernie Branco was definitely one of my mentors and one of the greatest people I've ever met. I happened to be his assistant coach at Stonehill College. And him and I work with children for over 30 years, providing camps. And he unfortunately passed away. But before he retired, he gave me a folder, and it was all about the high school programs that he wanted me to run. So we used to run a summer program for all the high schools. That was important in my life as well. And I went on to coach Massasoit Community College, and was fortunate enough to be named the National Junior College Coach of the Year, which is another privilege, another recognition. Talking about Laza, I'm glad that I'm seeing some of the guys that I used to play against, and I'm so glad that you are here because I have something to return to you, which is the bottom of your cleats that you left on my legs. It was so amazing to play in Laza. It was just incredible. I used to smell the sardines at Taunton Sports. It was a barbecue. It was just amazing. When we went to play in Ludlow, it was a whole family event. The bus was full of food, drinks. We would stop halfway. Here's the whole Portuguese club having a party in the middle of the highway. And the state police stops and says, "What's going on here?" "Oh, nothing. We're taking a little break. We're going far, Ludlow, really far." And to play at Cumberland was called a tapadinha. And it is a tapadinha because the field was so small and is so narrow that the fans were literally this close to you. And God, did I got hit with some umbrellas. Oh, yeah. It was unbelievable. One time, one of my memorable games as well, when I was playing for Lusitanos of Lowell, and I came to play Taunton. So I left Taunton and went Taunton Sports and went to play for Lowell, and where we became champions twice in a row, 2 years in a row. And I was fortunate enough in one of the free kicks to score a goal, top corner, 90, top 90. And I went to celebrate. My parents were there, my wife was there, my mother-in-law, my friends, everybody was there, and I went to celebrate. They happened to be sitting where the Taunton fans were. But the emotions of celebration, I ran and I knelt down and I waved to them and I threw kisses, and the guy came out of nowhere with a half a bottle after me. "You traitor, you should have never left. I can't believe you left." And so I had to be escorted by the police. I was not a criminal, by the way. So many good memories. And then later on, we had the opportunity to play against Dnieper of the old, what's that? Yeah, Piercefield. And also against Sporting of Portugal, Benfica, Porto, Estrela da Amadora, Belenenses, all those teams. And lucky me, I was picked to play. And how privileged. Oh, my God. It was like when you listen to that national anthem being played, and they played the Portuguese and the American national anthem, you were just glowing with pride, like, wow, look at all these people. Oh my goodness. And you were next to the guy that just scored for the Portuguese national team. And the guy that revolutionized soccer in Spain, his name was Paulo Futre. Paulo Futre revolutionized Atlético Madrid. He's now a big deal at the club. So we played against them. He toyed with us. He was so fast. Maybe you should have left your cleats on him, not on me, but that's okay. Anyway, so we played against Sporting. We had dinners afterwards. But I want to tell you a little bit about some memories that I also had. We had well-organized league, well-organized clubs. Taunton Sports, which was most of my career was spent there, had what we call a roupeiro. A roupeiro is the guy that cleans your clothing and washes and hangs, and everything was perfectly done. His name was Mr. Avlar. That day, it was pouring, and my clothes that I had brought with me was totally drenched. And I asked him if I could borrow some shorts and a shirt to go home. He made me sign a paper for a pair of shorts and a shirt. And on Tuesday, I had to return it. That's how he was. You know, it's just stuff like this. And then in 1996, when I resigned from playing, and I was playing for Academic in 95, we won the championships. I was lucky enough to win 6 championships, 6 cups, 3 super cups, but always playing for incredible teams and incredible players. I played with Mairinho. Francisco Mairinho played for the Brazilian national team. Leo, you don't know Mairinho because your parents weren't even born. But Mairinho was amazing. Our coaches came from Portugal, came from Brazil. We had players from Argentina. We had players from all over Italy, Argentina, United States. When in the 80s, we opened up the doors to welcome different ethnicities, different people. The Cape Verdeans were already established there with us. They were our family. I happened to be picked for the national U.S. team of Cape Verdeans. And I was the only Portuguese. But imagine the friendships that we built. That's what this was all about. I look back, I go to the clubs, and they hug me like, hey, I used to play against you. And he says, yeah, but we loved you anyway. We hated you when you were on the field, but man, we love you anyway. And then in 1996, soccer in Laza was at the end. And we needed to do something. And so Taunton Sports was going through a change, and a good friend of mine became the president of Taunton Sports. And I think he's here. Yeah. Rui Souza. He was the president of Taunton Sports, and he says, if you want to get anything, we're going to get you a trip to Terceira. Yes, we are. That's your pay, if you want it. But this is what you got to do. You got to get a senior team. You got to get a U14, a U16, a U17, and a U19. Otherwise, you're at the wrong door. And I said, let's do it. Lucky me, I was with Stonehill. So I recruited all the students that played for me to become coaches. And then I recruited the Suffolk University coach, George Silva, one of my best friends. He must be here. Oh, God, I knew he was here. I told him it was next week, but he shows up anyway. Anyway, he became one of the coaches. Every team had a trainer, a professional trainer. They were the trainers from Stonehill and Massasoit, and they volunteered. So they were all volunteers. The players would get a trip to Terceira, to the Azores. That was the payment. That was the reward. And boy, did we have fun. We also, within that, he said, oh, you also need to create a soccer school. What do you mean? Well, on Mondays, you need to totally dedicate yourself and your staff to teach kids for free in this club. So we did. For a whole year, every kid played for free. Every coach was a volunteer. Every director worked so hard to be fun of sandwiches and sumal and hot dogs. And we had appearances in the parades with the children. I could go on and on, but thank you. It's a privilege. I will be here as well in the panel.
Lucio mentioned Ernie, and that's one of the things that I think is common to all of us throughout soccer, is we build lifetime friendships from those days when we worked together. And Ernie was a great guy. If you ever went to see the Revolution play, he was the guy, before the game started, that walked the officials off the field and onto the field. And unfortunately, he was victimized in an accident, but he was just a great guy. One of the things we try to do, obviously, is this love for soccer, this passion for soccer, we try to transfer that to our children. I was very lucky. My kids were excellent players. They played all the way through college. So I think in that respect, I did a decent job. But there's nothing that fills me with more pride than to see a youngster from my son's generation also follow the sport and do well. And that's why I chased him and I insisted that he be here today, because he should be a matter of huge pride for all of us. He's a young Portuguese-American kid, okay, played even at the professional level, and now he's one of the most successful collegiate coaches in the United States. He took a program, a Division I program at Bryant University, and built it to the national level. To give you an idea, last year, they were ranked as high as #2 in the country in Division I. And to put that into perspective, you got to remember that you got the big sharks out there, the UCLAs, the Stanford, all those colleges, and this Portuguese kid went out and got the players that he needed to turn Bryant University into a powerhouse at the collegiate level. So I am so proud to say that he is one of my son's friends and someone that I admire a great deal, Ruben Rezendes.
Good evening, everyone. Listening to these war stories, has been fantastic. Let's give these guys another round of applause. So like John said, my name's Ruben Rezendes. I was born and raised in Fall River, Massachusetts. I'm currently the head men's soccer coach at Bryant University in Smithfield, Rhode Island. I also own a soccer academy that partners with 25 different town nonprofit youth soccer organizations, Dartmouth Youth Soccer, Acushnet Youth Soccer, basically everyone in Bristol County. I guess there's a saying, those that can't do, teach. I certainly wasn't as good of a player as Lucio and Carlos. And my playing career ended pretty early. At the age of 23, after college, I played for a season in Iceland, and then I got into coaching. But my love for the game stemmed from my father. My father, I didn't get to play in Laza, although I would have loved, or maybe not loved, to get chased by half a bottle. But when my father migrated here with my mother, he played with the clubs in Fall River Sports and Young Nationals. And so he really loved the sport, Benfiquista, and he instilled that same love and passion for the game in me. So although I don't have those funny stories of getting kicked and running to the corner. I do have one funny story. So towards the end of my dad's playing career, I think he was around 35 years old. He was playing for Forva Sports, and I can't recall if at the time it was Nel Lassa or if it was Lassa. But he had a game on a Saturday night at 6 p.m. at Britland Park, what used to be Billy Gonsalves Field, right? And at the time, which you probably wouldn't see it now, but at the time, you know, while he was playing under the lights in front of 400 or 500 people, all of the children of those guys playing were in the pitch dark behind the field playing their own World Cup soccer game, right? And so I was 5 years old, and I was playing goalie. I don't know why I was playing goalie, because I'm always the shortest one on the field. But I was in goal, and someone took a shot, and it hit me in the mouth, and my tooth fell out. So I was crying like a little baby. I found the tooth, and I ran so fast around the fence. If you guys know Britland Park, you know that it's fenced in, so I was outside of the field. I ran around the fence to the main entrance, and I went to the bench, and it was the middle of the second half. And I went up to the coach who was coaching Forva Sports, and I think they were playing against Snack Bar, which was a big rivalry at the time. And I was like, "Hey, my tooth fell out." And he's looking at me. He said, "What do you want me to do, kid? Your dad's in the game." So the Missagista took one of those classic ice packs, which you don't see anymore. Those ice, you know which ones I'm talking about, right? You clip them open, and then you throw the cold ice and water in them. And he's like, "Here, just throw this on your mouth. You'll be fine." And they put my tooth in a plastic bag. So I was 5 years old at the time, watching Forva Sports at Britland Park. Fast forward 11 years, I was 16, and I had just made the New England Revolution's first ever inaugural academy team. So the New England Revolution's professional team had been around for 15, 20 years, and they had just started a fully funded academy that didn't cost any money to play for, right? And so I was super excited for that because I was playing for a local club in Rhode Island called Bayside. But that same year that I made the New England Revolution, I was asked to play for the first time ever in what the time was called Lusa League, right? L-U-S-A, for Forva Sports at the age of 16. So I was, at that time, being very sneaky, because obviously the New England Revolution wouldn't allow me to play for the U19 New England Revolution and also for the Forva Sports. But I played the entire season for Forva Sports because the games were on opposite days. The Revs would play on Sunday, and Forva Sports would play on Saturday. So no one ever found out that I did that, but that was my little taste, I think, of what a lot of these guys went through in Laza. Although we didn't have the 1,500, 2,000 fans, there was always a couple hundred people there, practice twice a week, after training, dinner at the club, which, great memories, right? Going back to the club, having dinner, a few drinks. I obviously wasn't drinking because I was only 16 years old. I think your son actually was peer pressuring me, but no, I'm just kidding. So anyway, fast forward a couple more years. I played college soccer in New Hampshire for 4 years. And then after that, like I said, I played a season in the first division in Iceland. And then I had an opportunity to coach full-time with the New England Revolution at the age of 23, 24 years old. They gave me a full-time job, and, it was, I was my wife, who's here right now. We've been married for 7 years. We were together at the time, so, she was here teaching in Fall River, and I was in Iceland playing, and I come back, and I'm like, do I go back to Iceland and follow my dream, or, do I just continue coaching? So I decided to go the coaching route, which is probably the best decision I could have ever made, because, like I said, I was an okay player, but not as good as these guys, and I could never make a living out of it. But my coaching career started, and I've had stops at Dean College as a head coach. I went all the way to Vermont to be an assistant coach who won a national championship 2 years ago, for those of you guys who follow college soccer. After that, I went to be a Division II head coach at Franklin Pierce, where we won a national championship 4 years ago. And because of that, I was able to get a job at Bryant 3 years ago, a lot closer to home. During my time at Franklin Pierce, you talk about sacrifices, right, which is really important. You can't be involved in this game full-time without the support at home. And during my time at Franklin Pierce, my wife and I were living in Swansea. I think we had 2 children at the time. We now have 3 daughters. And I was driving 2 hours every day to Rindge, New Hampshire, for those of you guys that know where Franklin Pierce is. From Swansea, Massachusetts to Franklin Pierce, 2 hours up and 2 hours back for 4 years, just to be able to have a career in coaching in college soccer. So needless to say, I was really looking forward to get closer to home. So when the opportunity popped up at Bryant, it was a dream come true for both me and also my family. But extremely grateful, for everyone in this room, everyone that's been a part of LAZA and growing the sport in this community, especially my father, my mother, my uncles who played in the league, instilled this love and passion for the game in me, in my cousins. And I'm truly, truly blessed because I know there's not a lot of people that really, really get to follow their passion and be able to make a living out of it, right? So I'm able to make a living off of this. This is what I do full time. And again, none of it would have been possible if it wasn't for all of the groundwork and all of the past history that the Portuguese-Americans put in place in the past. So thank you.
Just a good side note about Ruben, and I wrote some stories about the team. On his team, he recruited 4 players from Portugal last year, and I spoke with the 4 kids. And the great thing about that was they all obviously love the game. They love to play soccer. They're all still thinking about possibly becoming professional players, but they also wanted to get a degree. And they made it very simple, very plain, and they said, John, that would never happen in Portugal. I would either have to go to school or play soccer. I could not combine those. Here, they said, not only am I playing at a very high level, okay, I'm getting my degree, and I'm at facilities that are Division I level in Portugal. If you've been to Bryant University, you know that Bjorn Stadium is top level. So it's great to see that Ruben has not forgotten his roots, and he had 4 kids from Portugal last year. So thank you, Ruben. And they say we always leave the best for last, so that's what I think we're doing, because we talked about the youth level, we talked about the community, we talked about the media, we talked about everything. But the one area where Portugal has really been lagging as far as soccer is concerned is in women's soccer. Fortunately, big steps have been taken. Right now, Portugal is in the top 20, I believe. In the last World Cup, we almost eliminated the United States. Very close that we came to eliminate the United States, and the United States is a powerhouse. But there's no need that a lot of work needs to be done at the women's level. In Portugal, there are top 3 teams, Porto, Benfica, Sporting, and only 2 years ago did Porto realize that they need to step up and also embrace women's soccer. Fortunately for us, little Portuguese country that doesn't do much in terms of soccer, there are some women doing extremely well here. The Boston Legacy coach is a Portuguese woman, Filipa Patão. It's an expansion side. And then the the Fire Royals? Chicago Fire, no, but they're not fired. It's something, it doesn't matter. The assistant coach is a young lady named Cabral. Her father is a well-known journalist in St. Michael. She coached Sporting for a while, so we're making inroads. And then we look in our backyard and we say, well, guess what? We have the best of both worlds. We have a young lady who not only is Cape Verdean, and as I said, we are brother and sister as far as Portugal and Cape Verde are concerned, but she is now getting a career going, and I am sure that she is the best example that young ladies could have. Play soccer, don't worry, just work hard, and you'll get to someday see a role model like Yasmin Carvalho, the coach from Bridgewater State University, and so I want her to try to tell you, compared to all the success and how easy it is for these guys, to tell you about the struggles and what it's like to be a coach and try to develop a women's program. So let's give her a warm welcome, please.
Good evening, everyone. How are you doing tonight? Good? Is everyone still awake and alive and we're good? All right, awesome. As I mentioned, my name is Yasmina Carvalho. I'm originally from Brockton, Massachusetts. I was born and raised. My heritage of my family is in 3 different places. My dad was born and raised in Senegal, but his full-blooded Cape Verdean blood through and through. And then my mom was born in Guinea-Bissau, but was raised in Portugal. Guinea-Bissau is a Portuguese colony in West Africa. So I'm kind of the mix of everyone and everything, especially growing up in Brockton. There's a very large mixture of cultures, especially the Portuguese and Cape Verdean cultures. So for me, soccer started at home. Just like Ruben, my dad, massive soccer fan. He played semi-pro. We won't talk a lot about that. But he would watch soccer every weekend, Saturdays, Sundays, even till now. He is glued to the TV. You can't get that man away from it. So as I grew up, we played soccer in the backyard, and that we had town soccer in Brockton, which was fantastic. But what I noticed throughout town soccer was I was the only brown girl on my team. And you think about it, you're growing up in a city with a lot of young Cape Verdean girls and young Portuguese girls, but how am I the only Cape Verdean Portuguese girl on this town soccer team in Brockton? I couldn't really understand it. And I started realizing that it was a financial thing and it was also a cultural thing. And I think that's still prevalent in today in women's sports and getting youth programs for girls who are migrating from Portugal or migrating from Cape Verde or migrating from Brazil. You kind of see that problematic space culturally sometimes. I taught at Brockton High for 11 years after I graduated from Bridgewater State, and I had several young women come up to me all the time saying, "Oh, I would love to play soccer here," or "Do you know how I sign up for the program?" Or I'd go up to them and say, "There's a lot of talent. Did you play back home?" And a lot of them would say yes, but it was never organized. It was in the street or at the playground, sometimes with no shoes. You see a lot of our students come into the gym and they take their shoes right off and they say 7v7 soccer. I'm like, no, you gotta play with your shoes on. We can't, but that is the culture. And we really need to feed into that. And I was very lucky. I'm learning over the past, I would say 72 hours, because we had a meeting earlier this week that LAZA actually had a lot to do with my upbringing and success in soccer. So like I said, I grew up playing town soccer. When I turned around 14 or 15, you start to hear the mumbles, like, which sport are you playing? Are you playing soccer or are you playing basketball? Those are my 2 sports. And my parents really put their money into basketball for me. That was the passion. That was the dream. It was Division II basketball, Division I basketball. How do we get you there? And soccer was kind of like my love. It was where I found my friends. It was where I was loose on the field. I had fun. It was just enjoyable. There was no pressure. And so as I got older, the town soccer people said, we should start looking into clubs. And I said, I'm a first-generation American. My parents don't have that much money, and they've put a lot of money into basketball. So we did some research, and we came across a club team called the Stoughton Warriors. And they had a girls' team, which was a U16 team. And Stoughton Warriors was sponsored by Luis Camões in Stoughton, which is also one of the clubs that these gentlemen had mentioned that also sponsored one of the teams for LAZA. So, and this specific Portuguese club only had 8 teams, and 3 of them were girls' teams. And I was lucky enough to know a few of my teammates from Brockton High who played for this club team. And they said, you should really come play for the club. It's gonna step you up your game. Town soccer coaches aren't soccer coaches. They're just parents who love to be around people. You need true coaching. And I said, I can't, South Shore Select charges $5,000. Scorpions charges $6,000. My parents don't have that money. And they said, no. It's $1,500 for the year. You get a uniform, you get a full year of training, you get a full year of traveling with a full schedule. And to me, that was the start of my love, number one, but also my competitiveness within the sport. I always loved it, but I never thought I wanted to compete at a high level. So now I'm on a team with about 3 or 4 young ladies who are from the Portuguese descent, 2 others who are from the Cape Verdean descent, including myself. And then we had a couple of girls who were from Haiti, and then the rest were Italian and Irish. So it was a nice little mixture of everyone, but we all played for the Portuguese Soccer Club. We all went to Luís Camões after the soccer games, just like these guys did. Probably drank a little less beer, but we did. And it was cool to see that the teammates who weren't from the Portuguese descent or didn't understand what a Portuguese club is or what it looks like or why people are members there. It was really cool to see them sit in that club and learn by just being there and being around my heritage and our people. And I was lucky enough to have my first Portuguese soccer coach, Mario Cardoso. And his daughter went off to be a fantastic player at Southern New Hampshire. Her best friend, who had just moved here 2 years ago from Brazil, went off and played at a D2 school as well. And that kind of started it for me as well. So right after I was done with that club team, I said, basketball's not happening in college, unfortunately, Mom. I'm sorry about the thousands and thousands of dollars you just spent, but I want to play soccer in college. And unfortunately, that team, we only played for a year and it dispersed, but it gave me the opportunity with Mario Cardoso to reach out to another Portuguese man who used to run South Shore Select, which is Lorindo Lima. I don't know if he's pretty well known in the soccer community around the South Shore. And now his daughter, Liz Lima, runs the club. So he reached out for me and said, hey, I have a really talented girl, doesn't have a lot of money, but she really wants to play club. And he said, she's Portuguese, can you help her out? And Lorindo opened his arms and took me in for the next 2 years and really got me exposed, and that's how I ended up at Bridgewater State University and playing there for 4 years. And there I thought, okay, a community, maybe some more people from my heritage, maybe more people who are first-generation Americans, who are young females. And unfortunately, I didn't walk into that. I walked into a community that was full of Americans, Irish, Italian, a lot of people who their parents were born here and they have a lot of just their basis is here. And I'm a girl who is a first-generation with Americans first-generation American whose parents had to work their way up. So that was another battle at BSU, kind of seeing, wow, I'm the only brown girl on this campus that's a female athlete at this time. But I was lucky enough, 2 years later in my junior year, our head women's basketball coach, who's actually here tonight, she recruited 2 girls from New Bedford, who were also, one was Cape Verdean and one is Portuguese Cape Verdean, yes. And it was so comforting to see that people who look like me were also being given opportunities. And so it's very cool to see that LAZA started my journey and had something to do with it because it was a Portuguese club. And then it's awesome to see that that Portuguese club introduced me to another Portuguese coach who gave me the opportunity at a well-established club. And then after that club, I got to meet people as coaches. And so now I have a mentor who is amazing, Scott Dolan, who is very well known in the South Shore for soccer. Unfortunately, he passed away. And so he introduced me to another Portuguese man. And I was at the age of 22. I just graduated from Bridgewater State University. I want to be a teacher, but I also want to be a coach, so what I'm going to do. And Scott introduced me to Rolando Lopes, and he was the head coach over at Stonehill College for the women's soccer team at that time, which was in 2011. And he said, you're Portuguese, I've heard of you, I know of you, you're hired. And I loved it. I said, damn, this Portuguese blood is really working for me. Like, we're on year 6, let's keep it rocking. So you know, our heritage is close and we look out for each other, and it's something I've always appreciated. And when Rolando left Stonehill, I had to leave as well. And he put out a good word to another Portuguese man over at UMass Boston called Greg Vizinho. And Greg Vizinho gave me a call that day and said, we're looking for an assistant coach at UMass Boston. Please come join us. So I did that. I was there for one fall season, and a job at Bridgewater State College, or Bridgewater State University, had opened up for the head women's soccer team, and all of my mentors said, go, 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 go. Just go for the experience. You need interview experience, and interview experience with people that you know is very good. So I was 26 years old at the time, and I went for the interview, and phone interview, and about a week later, they said, you were hired. I said, what? I'm 26. But they took a chance on me, and they wanted to create a culture and a program that invites young women to not only explore the sport that they love so much and get a fantastic education, but also a program that helps young women grow within themselves within 4 years. How do we become confident? How do we communicate with others? How do we become a team player? And so I'm going into my 13th season, which is crazy to say. Yep, thank you. And I'm really, really, really proud to say that starting 2026, my roster will consist of 4 Portuguese players. Yes, you can give a round of applause for that, 4 Portuguese players. And 1 Brazilian player who just moved here from Brazil 2 years ago. So we're doing our best with what we can do, but there's still a ton of work to be done. And I think it's within our communities, Fall River, Brockton, New Bedford, Stoughton, Dartmouth. We really need to start creating the community that Laza created, but for women. And start with the young age girls who need clinics to go to for free with coaches who know what they're doing and know what they're talking about. They're just not a parent being there. And that's how we really start to build, because it started with me, but it can't end with me. There's a ceiling that needs to be broken, and hopefully you'll help us break that ceiling. So I appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking to you all.
Thank you. We are running a little bit behind schedule, so hopefully we can go right into Q&A. John.
Yes, just one more word in the small world department. She mentioned Laurin Lima. Laurin Lima has roots, very deep roots in Laza. He was from the Cambridge area, I believe. He was very involved for a while, then he got involved in Dunkin' Donuts, went to a highest level than we did, but when you start pulling all these threads, you know, there's something there very common. So these are great stories. I hope you enjoyed it. We're all different, but we all have something in common: love for the sport and the friendship that we all share. And I think if you could look for the one area of this passion of soccer that is most attractive, it's the friendships that you create. And they're friendships for a lifestyle. So we'd like to open it up for questions. If you have any questions to any of us about anything related to soccer, and just let me know.
John, why did Lhasa end?
What is it?
Why did Lhasa end?
I would say there were a number of reasons. One was the severe decline in immigration. So the feeder system of the players that were coming from abroad, mostly from Portugal, that were attractive, stopped. The development of professional soccer at this level as well. And then just the decline in the clubs. Immigration ended. I mean, you look how many clubs from our community have closed their doors because they don't have the feeder system, and it has nothing to do with soccer. It has to do with life itself. How many of us who have kids actually have kids that go to a Portuguese establishment if we don't go with them? Not too many. And unfortunately, a lot of these clubs did not provide attractive things to draw the youth to come and continue. Soccer was huge. It was. The youth teams, I'll give you an example. I was coaching a Maple team. At the time, Maple was the cream of the crop of soccer in Massachusetts. And my teams played for Portuguese Sports, Académica, Taunton Sports. And I remember telling them, listen, we're going to play for Taunton Sports. They have a nice field. So now we have a field where we can practice. We don't have to worry about where are we going to practice. So it's a nice club. As a matter of fact, the kids can take showers there if they want after practice. They have a restaurant. They'll feed them. And the question was, okay, so how much is this costing? I said, no, it doesn't really cost anything. It would be nice if you became members of the club and paid $50 a year. I said, paid what? $50 a year. And then, so what about the rest? The uniforms, the club gives it to you. All the fees, the club pays. The practice facility, it's the club's. The dressing room is the club's. So if you have something like that, and you continue providing it, like Lusitana does. In Bedford, there's a great example, which is St. Michael. St. Michael still has a very vigorous youth program. Lusitana and Cumberland does, but for the most part, those things, and plus nowadays, kids are just not as committed. I coached at the youth level, and I went 4 years without coaching, and I thought, when I went back for 1 year, that's all I could take, I thought I was living like 5 decades later than I was, because the difference in mentality from years to years just changed. Kids just have different things that attract them, and you need special coaches to be able to bring that out of them and to inject that love for the sport for them. But Laza had no chance. Clubs just started dispersing and losing the older people. I mean, you look, all the celebrations even the Holy Ghost. You look at Fall River, the Holy Ghost feast was the most vibrant feast in our community. And now it's barely surviving. Why? Because all the older people are working in the kitchen, and they're getting sick and tired of being there, and they can no longer continue to work. And we can't find the younger kids to come in and take over. It's the reality of our community. There's no immigration anymore. We don't have the new blood to come in and inject and give us that boost of energy that we need.
Do you have another question here? Thank you, John.
I just have a comment about the importance of art.
We're recording, so I'd love it if you...
Oh, sorry. I can't help but mention the importance of archives in the midst of you talking about a generation disappearing. You're showing up with these wonderful documents. Where will these documents end up? So it seems tremendously important that a lot of this information that you guys have all been talking about winds up in a place called, for example, the Ferreira Mendes Portuguese-American Archives at UMass Dartmouth, or another archive much further away called the Portuguese-American Digital Archive, where I teach at UMass Lowell. And so I think there'd be an enduring tribute to this amazing experience. And then beyond that, maybe a book. John. A book, by the way, John is a great ref. My 3 kids all had him as a ref for many years, and I'm very grateful, so I can publicly thank him. But I think a book would be great at Tegas Press. This is an amazing story. You mentioned 1930, but there was a team in Lowell in 1924, the Club Madeirense Soccer Club, and they were, I think, state champions. They were considered the best team in the state at that time when all of the mills had teams. So they were playing against mill teams, etc. So there's an amazing amount of history. A lot of this I found in the Diário de Notícias, which is at UMass Dartmouth. So it seems to me, John, that you would be the great writer, editor of a volume for Tegas Press. And I can't help but also call attention to the fact that you guys could all, of course, be on comedy shows. So, and I'm sure there's some sort of archive for comedians also in the region somewhere, so it's endless what could be done. But anyway, it's been really great listening to all of you. It's an astonishing story. I myself moved from California, where I played on a Portuguese team called Académica. And so when I first arrived here, I went to several games, the Laza games, etc. And you're right, at that time it was the great soccer probably in the country. But anyway, so I couldn't help it. I'm sure a lot of other people were thinking the same, but make this an enduring, not only this wonderful event today, but turn it into something enduring and for generations to come.
We would like to take at least one more question. I do want to say we're about 10 minutes behind schedule, and I'm sure everyone is going to want to enjoy some Tia Maria's hot food, not cold, and avoid the rain that's coming at 8 o'clock before we cross over. But I encourage you to join us across the street and continue to ask questions from our panelists that are here today. Where's the other question?
I got one question to Ms. Medina. It's been a long time. Congratulations. Welcome back to New Bedford.
Thank you.
By the way, the person who just addressed Carlos is a long-time figure in LASA. He was one of those don't take any prisoners kind of defenders. Mr. Nelson Cardoso was just an incredible player. So it's nice to see him here.
Hello, good evening. My name is Isaura from Pawtucket. I am Cape Verdean. I'm first generation. My parents were both born in Cabo Verde. And I want to thank you all, first off, for hosting this event, for participating. I am a huge fan of 97.3. That is what was on growing up. That's all my dad had for sporting, any games. We couldn't ask to change the station. It had to be 97.3. So that is how I became a soccer fan. I grew up watching Mia Hamm and João Pinto. And so I am American, I am Cape Verdean, and I'm Portuguese as well. The question I have for you all is, how do we support the future generations, the kids, youth, jovens from Cabo Verde, Portugal, Azores, Brazil, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, et cetera, with the challenge of anti-immigrant sentiments and legislation that isn't just recent as well. There have been waves of this for centuries. So again, how do we do that? Through sports or other ways of culture and customs and community? And thank you all again.
For me, what I would imagine us doing is doing what, unfortunately, back then we didn't think of it with LASA, was to create the youth programs and stop relying on the immigration, basically as a feeding system for soccer players, which, like John mentioned correctly, so I'm an example of one of the players that came from Cape Verde, because I did play in Cape Verde, then I played in Portugal, and then I came here. So again, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to bring LASA back. So what we need to do is cooperate now with the existing different leagues that we have in these various, in southeastern Massachusetts, in Rhode Island. There are quite a few leagues out there, and see that our kids, now in my case, my granddaughters, they are involved, like they live in Cranston, and they are going actually playing with some on these youth programs, which is the only thing we can do at this point. We're not going to be able to bring LASA back, but we need to become involved with these programs and make sure that our grandchildren somehow become soccer players, because if they don't, even if they don't succeed as great soccer players, but they become soccer fans, which is what we need, because we need to support the soccer program in the U.S. At least that's my my opinion. And of course, we have a different system here than we have in Europe. Colleges are the primary feeders now of the United States soccer program, even the national team. So, and that's something that we need to do. We're not going to be able to do it like they do it in Portugal, where just about any major team in Portugal has a youth program where the players begin to grow from maybe 13, 14 years old. But here it's a different system, so as parents, as grandparents, we just need to become involved and support those teams.
I agree with Carlos. I think the best we can do is offer our experience and our time. And I remember I got involved at coaching at the youth level because I used to bring my son to practice. And I'd be in the car and I'd say, what is this guy doing? And one day the director of the league said, who are you, sir? I said, well, I'm Adrian's dad. Oh, you don't like the job that the coach is doing? I said, well, no. You think you can do better? No. See, that's the problem. People like you that know the game, you come over here, you're kind of fed up because you don't like the job that poor coach is doing. He's volunteering his time. Sitting here, bad-mouthing the guy. We don't need people like you. We need people like you if you want to coach. And I did. I went and I got my national coaching license. And I had the time of my life coaching my son. But that's the way it is.
We have one more question from this gentleman, and then we'll call it a wrap. But before everybody gets up and goes, we have some gifts for the panelists, so bear with us.
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment to thank for initiating what this just happened here tonight. I think it's overdue. But I'd like everyone to remind that the Lusophone Soccer Association, which at the time I happened to have been the secretary of publicity. And these people, at the time, the president was Fausto Martino, and I was there for about 2 years. And just to remind that they dealt with all these clubs, and it was quite a task, because every week we had our meetings, and some of the problems that took place on the soccer field, they're the ones that had to put up with the patients. And I happened to be there one night, which I thought was very, very funny. One of the clubs from Fall River he got fined for $50, and he disagreed with the fine. He said he wasn't going to pay, and because he didn't think it was right. So Fausto Martino says, if you don't show up here Thursday with the money, you guys cannot play on Sunday's game. And you lose the game, and the fine is going to go up. So on a Friday, one of the delegates from that club came in, and he had a bag with him. And he said, Mr. President, which was Mr. Fausto, and he dumped the bag on top of the counter, all pennies on $50. He said, can we play Sunday? And the president says, get out of here. And these people on the Lusophone Soccer Association, they never got paid. They worked voluntarily. And they dealt with these clubs. And we should think of them and honor them too, just like you're doing here tonight. Thank you.